Prepare for the showdown that's got America talking. We're breaking down every explosive moment of Karoline Leavitt's face-off with Whoopi Goldberg on The View. From Leavitt's searing accusations of hypocrisy to Whoopi's struggle to defend her stance, we'll show you why this clash is more than just TV drama. It's a battle for the soul of political discourse in America. The View's latest episode started like any other, with the panel ready to discuss hot topics and interview guests. But when conservative commentator Karoline Leavitt took her seat, the atmosphere shifted. Little did anyone know, this seemingly routine appearance would ignite a firestorm that would have social media buzzing for days. As the conversation turned to current events, Leavitt calmly expressed her views on the state of political discourse in America. She touched on the concept of wokeness and its impact on society, suggesting that it often stifles genuine debate and promotes ideological conformity. It was this comment that caught Whoopi Goldberg's attention, and her reaction was anything but expected. Whoopi, known for her passionate and often controversial opinions, immediately bristled at Leavitt's stance. She launched into a heated defense of what she called awareness rather than wokeness, arguing that it was about creating equal opportunities for all. Whoopi claimed that without this awareness, many people would be shut out of job opportunities and social advancement. But Leavitt wasn't about to let that argument slide. She countered with a powerful rebuttal, asserting that true equality comes from judging individuals on their merits, not their ideological alignment. It's about what you can do, not what you believe, Leavitt stated firmly, her eyes locked with Whoopi's across the table. The tension on set was palpable. Other panelists shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure whether to intervene or let the debate unfold. Joy Behar opened her mouth to interject, but thought better of it as Leavitt continued her argument. Leavitt didn't stop there. She delved into the historical context that Whoopi had tried to invoke, pointing out that the civil rights movement was about ensuring equal treatment under the law, not enforcing a particular ideological viewpoint. We've come so far as a nation, Leavitt said, but now we're at risk of creating new forms of discrimination in the name of progress. This was the moment when the simmer turned to a boil. Whoopi, visibly agitated, leaned forward in her chair. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, her voice rising. "You haven't lived through what we've lived through." But Leavitt stood her ground. "I may not have your life experience, Whoopi," she replied calmly, "but I've seen how this ideology is dividing our country. It's creating more problems than it's solving." The other panelists were now fully engaged, with Sarah Haynes trying to mediate and Sunny Hostin backing up Whoopi's position. But it was clear that this had become a two-woman showdown, with Leavitt and Whoopi at the center of the storm. As the debate reached its peak, Leavitt delivered the line that would send shockwaves through the studio and beyond. "The View claims to value diverse perspectives," she said, her voice steady and clear, "but when faced with a viewpoint that challenges your narrative, you resort to shutting it down. Isn't that the very definition of the intolerance you claim to fight against?" The studio fell silent for a moment, the weight of Leavitt's words hanging in the air. Whoopi's face was a mix of shock and anger, while the other panelists looked stunned. It was clear that Leavitt had struck a nerve, exposing a contradiction at the heart of the show's ethos. In that moment, the dynamic of the entire show shifted. What had started as a routine segment had turned into a defining moment for both Leavitt and The View. Viewers at home were undoubtedly on the edges of their seats, watching as years of built-up tension around political discourse in America played out in real time on their screens. Just when it seemed the fireworks were over, Karoline Leavitt unleashed a counterattack that would make media history. She had come armed with facts, examples, and a strategy to expose The View's double standards. The audience was about to witness a takedown so thorough it would change the show's dynamic forever. Leavitt's composed response to Whoopi's emotional outburst was a masterclass in political discourse. Instead of matching Whoopi's intensity, Leavitt calmly began to deconstruct the very foundation of The View's argument. The tension in the studio was palpable as Leavitt methodically exposed the contradictions in the show's portrayal of wokeness and their selective application of so-called inclusive principles. As Leavitt made her case, there was a noticeable shift in the audience's reaction. The initial murmurs of disagreement gave way to a stunned silence. Leavitt wasn't just defending herself, she was holding up a mirror to The View's hypocrisy, and the reflection wasn't flattering. "Let's talk about true inclusivity," Leavitt challenged, her voice steady and clear. She then launched into a series of examples that highlighted The View's treatment of conservative women. She brought up instances where conservative guests had been interrupted, talked over, or outright dismissed when expressing views that didn't align with the panel's ideology. diversity. Leavitt didn't stop there. She delved into an analysis of past incidents where The View had effectively silenced opposing viewpoints. She reminded the audience of times when conservative voices were cut off mid-sentence, or when their arguments were misrepresented to fit a particular narrative. The panelists shifted uncomfortably in their seats as Leavitt pressed her point, their usual confident demeanor noticeably shaken. As Leavitt continued her argument about true inclusivity, she broke down the concept piece by piece. She argued that genuine diversity of thought means embracing perspectives from all sides of the political spectrum, not just those that fit a predetermined worldview. The audience, usually quick to applaud the host's rebuttals, found themselves nodding along with Leavitt's logic. The panelists' discomfort was visible as Leavitt pressed her point. Whoopi, known for her quick comebacks, struggled to maintain control of the conversation. She attempted to pivot the discussion away from the criticisms Leavitt raised, but it was too late. The cracks in The View's argument were now glaringly apparent to everyone watching. Leavitt didn't stop at critiquing The View. She skillfully connected the show's behavior to broader media bias, painting a picture of a larger problem in political discourse. She argued that the echo chamber created by shows like The View was contributing to the polarization of American politics, stifling genuine debate and understanding between different ideological camps. As Leavitt built towards her conclusion, the studio fell into a hushed anticipation. Everyone could sense that something big was coming, and then, with the precision of a seasoned debater, Leavitt delivered her mic drop moment. If The View truly believes in inclusivity and diversity, Leavitt stated, her gaze sweeping across the panel, then why does that inclusivity seem to stop at the door of conservative thought? True progress comes from engaging with ideas we disagree with, not silencing them. The impact was immediate. Whoopi, usually quick with a retort, was left speechless. The other panelists exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unprepared for such a direct challenge to their worldview. In that moment, it was clear that Leavitt had not just won an argument, she had exposed a fundamental flaw in The View's approach to political discourse. As the dust settled from Leavitt's verbal bombshell, all eyes turned to Whoopi Goldberg. The usually unflappable host was visibly shaken, but she wasn't about to go down without a fight. Whoopi's attempt to regain control of the conversation would soon expose the deepest cracks in The View's facade of inclusivity. Whoopi launched into a passionate defense of wokeness, claiming it was all about inclusivity and equal opportunities. Without that wokeness, you might not have that job, she declared, her voice rising with emotion. But as she spoke, it became clear that her arguments were built on shaky ground. The tension in the studio was palpable as Whoopi struggled to maintain her composure. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her notes, her eyes darting between Leavitt and her fellow panelists, searching for support that wouldn't come. It was a rare sight to see the quick-witted comedian so clearly on the back foot. As Whoopi continued her defense, the contradictions in her statements became glaringly obvious. She preached about inclusivity and fairness, yet her own show had a history of silencing and mocking conservative voices. The irony wasn't lost on the audience, who shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Leavitt, sensing Whoopi's vulnerability, pressed her advantage. She skillfully pointed out the logical fallacies in Whoopi's argument, exposing the straw man tactics Whoopi was using to misrepresent Leavitt's position. Instead of addressing Leavitt's actual points about the negative impacts of woke culture, Whoopi was attacking a caricature of conservative views that didn't reflect reality. The other panelists on The View, usually quick to jump in and support each other, were uncharacteristically silent. Their discomfort was evident as they exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unprepared for such a direct challenge to their worldview. This lack of solidarity only served to highlight the cracks in Whoopi's argument and the show's approach to political discourse. As Whoopi faltered, you could almost see the moment she realized she was losing the audience. The usual nods of agreement and supportive murmurs from the crowd had given way to a tense silence. Some audience members even leaned forward, hanging on Leavitt's every word as she systematically dismantled Whoopi's defense. In a desperate attempt to regain control, Whoopi tried to pivot the conversation away from Leavitt's criticisms, but this evasive maneuver only underscored her inability to effectively counter the arguments presented. It was like watching a boxer on the ropes, flailing wildly in hopes of landing a lucky punch. The key flaw in Whoopi's argument that Leavitt exposed was the glaring inconsistency between The View's claims of promoting inclusivity and their actual treatment of conservative women. Leavitt's challenge to this hypocrisy struck a chord with the audience, prompting a larger conversation about the true nature of inclusivity inclusivity in media. Whoopi's struggle to reconcile her stance on wokeness with The View's track record of dismissing conservative viewpoints was painful to watch. She stammered through explanations, her usual eloquence abandoning her in this crucial moment. It was clear that she was unprepared for a guest who wouldn't back down in the face of the show's typical bullying tactics. As Whoopi's defense crumbled, the atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically. The audience, once firmly in Whoopi's corner, now seemed unsure. Some even nodded along with Leavitt's points, a sight that would have been unthinkable just minutes earlier. The ground was shifting beneath The View's feet, and everyone could feel it. Leavitt, seizing the moment, drove her point home. She highlighted how The View's treatment of conservative guests, interrupting them, dismissing their views, and often resorting to personal attacks, stood in stark contrast to their professed values of inclusivity and respect for diverse perspectives. This wasn't just about a difference of opinion, it was about exposing a fundamental flaw in how The View approached political discourse. The confrontation laid bare the show's double standards when it came to political diversity. While The View had long prided itself on representing a range of viewpoints, Leavitt's challenge revealed that this diversity had clear limits. Conservative voices, it seemed, were welcome only as long as they didn't challenge the show's established narrative too forcefully. The View's studio might have fallen silent, but the world outside was about to erupt. As the cameras stopped rolling, a seismic shift in public perception was already underway. The confrontation between Karoline Leavitt and Whoopi Goldberg had struck a nerve, and the aftershocks were about to reshape the landscape of political discourse. At first, it seemed like business as usual. The View's loyal fan base rallied around their beloved hosts, flooding social media with messages of support. But as the dust settled and the full impact of Leavitt's words sank in, something unexpected happened. The tide of public opinion began to turn. Within hours, clips of the confrontation went viral, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. What started as a trickle soon became a torrent, with viewers from all walks of life weighing in on the debate. And the verdict? It wasn't what The View's producers had hoped for. Comment sections exploded with support for Leavitt's stance. Viewers who had never given The View a second thought were suddenly glued to their screens, dissecting every word of the exchange. Finally, someone said it, became a common refrain as people shared their own frustrations with the show's handling of political discussions. But it wasn't just the usual conservative voices cheering Leavitt on. The confrontation had struck a chord with a surprisingly diverse audience. Young liberals, disillusioned with what they saw as performative wokeness, found themselves nodding along with Leavitt's critique. Moderates who had long felt alienated by the polarized media landscape saw in Leavitt a voice of reason. The numbers don't lie. In the wake of the confrontation, Leavitt's social media following skyrocketed. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, across all platforms, her follower count surged. It wasn't just a temporary boost either. Days after the incident, the growth showed no signs of slowing down. People weren't just rubbernecking at a viral moment, they were actively seeking out Leavitt's perspective. This surge in interest wasn't limited to social media metrics. Mainstream media outlets, initially hesitant to cover the story, found themselves playing catch-up. News anchors who had dismissed the confrontation as just another daytime TV spat were now dedicating entire segments to analyzing its implications. Political commentators scrambled to book Leavitt for interviews, eager to capitalize on her newfound popularity. But perhaps the most telling sign of the shift in public perception came from The View's own audience. Longtime fans of the show, who had cheered along with every quip and comeback from the hosts, were now expressing doubts. Comment sections on The View's official social media accounts, once an echo chamber of praise, became battlegrounds of debate. "I've watched The View for years," one commenter wrote, "but this made me question everything. Maybe it's time for some fresh perspectives." This sentiment was echoed across thousands of comments, signaling a growing dissatisfaction with the show's handling of differing opinions. The divide between The View's traditional supporters and its new critics grew wider by the day. Those who had once seen the show as a bastion of progressive thought were now grappling with accusations of echo chamber mentality. Meanwhile, viewers who had previously written off The View as irrelevant found themselves tuning in, curious to see how the show would address the fallout. But perhaps the most surprising demographic to rally behind Leavitt was young women. Far from being put off by her confrontational style, many saw in Leavitt a role model for standing up to established power structures. Social media buzzed with posts from young women praising Leavitt's poise and articulation in the face of adversity. Watching Karoline Leavitt stand her ground made me realize I don't have to apologize for my beliefs. One viral tweet read, said. It's okay to challenge the status quo even when it's uncomfortable. This groundswell of support from young women caught many political analysts off guard. It challenged long-held assumptions about generational politics and suggested a more complex landscape than the simple left-right divide often portrayed in the media. The View's studio might have fallen silent, but the world outside was about to erupt. This wasn't just another celebrity spat. It was a symptom of a deeper societal shift. The clash between Karoline Leavitt and Whoopi Goldberg had exposed fault lines in America's cultural bedrock, and the aftershocks were about to reshape the media landscape. As clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire across social media, it became clear that this moment had struck a nerve. But why? What made this particular clash so significant? The answer lies in the growing cultural divide that's been simmering beneath the surface of American society. At the heart of this divide is the concept of wokeness, a term that's become a lightning rod in political discourse. For some, it represents progress and inclusivity. For others, it's seen as a threat to traditional values and free speech. The Leavitt-Goldberg showdown brought this debate into sharp focus, forcing viewers to confront their own beliefs about media bias and representation. The backlash against The View in the wake of the confrontation revealed a deeper frustration among Americans. Many viewers expressed a desire for more balanced representation and accountability in how differing opinions are treated. It's not just about left versus right anymore. It's about whether our media institutions are truly fostering open discussions or simply reinforcing narrow ideological viewpoints. This incident has become a mirror reflecting changing attitudes towards mainstream media. For years, shows like The View have positioned themselves as bastions of diverse opinions. But as the dust settled from this clash, many began to question whether that diversity extended beyond surface-level representation to include genuine diversity of thought. The rise of alternative platforms and voices in political discourse has been accelerating for years, but moments like this act as catalysts. As trust in traditional media institutions wavers, audiences are increasingly turning to independent commentators, podcasts, and social media personalities who promise unfiltered perspectives. But here's the kicker. This shift isn't just about where people get their news. It's about how they engage with political ideas. The viral nature of the Leavitt-Goldberg confrontation demonstrates the power of these moments to reshape public trust in institutions and influence future political dialogue in America. As political polarization continues to rise, incidents like this have the potential to become defining moments in our cultural narrative. They force us to confront uncomfortable questions about who gets to speak, who gets to be heard, and who gets to decide what's acceptable in public discourse. Experts are predicting that this ongoing debate surrounding wokeness and media representation could lead to a significant shift in how political discourse is conducted. There's an increasing demand for genuine diversity of thought in public forums, and media outlets that fail to adapt may find themselves losing relevance. But let's be clear, this isn't just about conservative voices feeling silenced. It's about a broader frustration with the way political discussions are framed and conducted in the public sphere. Many Americans, regardless of their political leanings, are hungry for more nuanced, substantive debates that go beyond sound bites and Twitter wars. The Leavitt-Goldberg clash has become a rallying cry for those who feel unrepresented or misunderstood by mainstream media. It sparked conversations in living rooms, coffee shops, and online forums across the country about the role of media in shaping our political landscape. As we move forward, the challenge for media outlets will be to find a way to bridge these divides without compromising their values or alienating their core audiences. It's a delicate balancing act, but one that's crucial for the health of our democracy. This moment could mark a significant shift in media dynamics. We might see a move towards more diverse panels, stricter standards for fairness in political discussions, or even the rise of new formats designed to foster more productive debates. Whatever the outcome, it's clear that the status quo is no longer acceptable to a large portion of the American public. The Leavitt-Goldberg clash has become a watershed moment, forcing America to confront the elephant in the room: media accountability. It's not just about two personalities butting heads anymore. This showdown has ripped open the curtains, exposing the dire need for genuine diversity of thought in our public forums. The ripples from this confrontation are spreading far and wide, transforming how we view political debate in America. It's like a dam has burst, and suddenly everyone's questioning the status quo. Are we really getting the full picture from our media? America? Or are we just being fed carefully curated narratives? This isn't just about left versus right anymore. It's about the very foundation of our political discourse. As trust in traditional media institutions continues to crumble, we're seeing a seismic shift. People are hungry for real, unfiltered perspectives. They're demanding more than just the same old talking points regurgitated by the same old faces. The future of political debate in America, it's looking a whole lot more diverse, a whole lot more challenging, and a whole lot more real. Buckle up, folks. This ride's just getting started.